Here's to all metal maniacs, the time has come for another video on the Iron Horde channel. You are used to it by now. Every Wednesday we put up this video. And for this video I have decided to do something which I see being questioned and posted quite frequently on social media. 5 bands which I have always felt are way overrated, especially when one takes in consideration a number of issues which I will delve deeper in today's video. So grab your favorite drink and let's go straight ahead to today's video. Let's go. Thanks for joining us again for this video. If you are new here, the aim of this channel is to review albums and festivals, suggest bands, delve in the culture aspect of heavy metal in general and more. So if you're interested in this content, please consider supporting this channel by subscribing, liking and sharing our videos on social media. As I said in the introduction, I have 5 very famous bands today, bands which I have always been amazed with how much following they have compared to the quality of the music. First and foremost, it is important to say that I like the bands that I will mention in this video. I don't really feel as I'm a particularly big fan of them, though I appreciate a few tracks here and there and don't really find myself putting their music on quite that often. Obviously, to stamp something as overrated, you have to rate the band in the first place, so a certain attraction towards the music is there. But in the end, when I weigh everything, I find it difficult to understand the great hype behind these particular bands. When I add everything up, something doesn't feel right, basically. It is not just the quality of the music though. I look at the whole package, the amount of ticket sales they make, the extensive tours they book, the longevity and similar factors. These bands are all extremely famous and vary from hard rock bands to metal bands. So let's not waste any more time and jump to the first band in this list. Surely the band with the least following from those that I will be mentioning, and I have decided to include the band Dream Theater. I'm not the biggest progressive metal fan, actually I'm not really a fan at all, bar a few exceptions, but during my late teenage years when I was just discovering the more obscure bands like Dream Theater, they were one of the first that I was following, especially because of their EP A Change of Season. I remember I got obsessed with the track that carries the same name as the EP. For those who have no idea about this track, it is a 23-minute track which I can only categorize as a masterpiece. When 23 minutes feel like 5 minutes, there must be something great about that piece of music. But the masterpieces, as far as I'm concerned, begin, start and stop with that track. The album Images and Words is quite good as well, but never reaches the levels shown on the track A Change of Seasons. Yet they are frequently taken as some kind of landmark band in progressive metal. Nobody denies their prowess as musicians, but I feel their ability in composing music has been on a downward spiral since 1995, which was the year when A Change of Seasons was released. If I had to mention a band with more or less the same style which would deserve to be regarded much more than Dream Theater as far as I'm concerned, that would be Fate's Warning. More diversity in the tracks, better riffs, better vocals. Can't understand the over fascination with Dream Theater really. Had the opportunity to see them live as well, and they actually were quite boring. Thankfully, local band Nomad Sun played before them, so they actually made the price of the ticket worthwhile. In the next position, I'm going to include two bands which had a similar trajectory and a lot of similarities, and I'm referring to Slayer and Metallica. Great thrash bands, influential to the thrash metal as well, as they were amongst the first bands to play that kind of style. In both cases, their first four respective albums have become classics of the subgenre. I find myself often listening to them as well up to this day. As far as I'm concerned, the last great album of both bands was released in 1988. For Metallica it was And Justice for All, and for Slayer that would be South of Heaven. Nothing after that is really worth listening to, as far as I'm concerned. Metallica adopted a softer approach and probably became, because of this, one of the highest selling metal bands ever. And Slayer, even though they still retain some kind of aggressivity both in the music and their image, they didn't release anything worth spending your hard-earned money on since then. Yet, even though 32 years have passed from these records, they still continue filling stadiums and headlining festivals as if they're some kind of gods of thrash metal. They are still kind of bearing the fruits of albums which are 32 plus years old and nothing worthwhile being released after that. Even their live shows, as good as it is to hear those classic thrash tracks that have made history, but the overall quality of the bands, from what I have seen on videos, is not really that high. I personally would go and watch these bands if they played in Malta, for example, but I doubt that would even happen, and I would never go abroad just to see their concert. Other than that, I prefer to follow and support some younger thrash bands who are releasing great albums and are filled with that energy and vigor which I don't find anymore in these two classic bands. The thing I dislike about the fan base of these bands is that no matter what they release, they will keep on following them just because they are famous. I can never really understand this kind of attitude, because if you are not releasing good albums, you have to be called out, and I wouldn't go to see a band just because 30 years ago they have released a good or 4 good records. Next in line, one of the most famous bands ever, and I'm referring to Kiss. Now, I have never been a huge Kiss fan, always felt that their music was too soft, and the makeup and glitters and all that show was not something I ever found attractive. Needless to say though, they have some quality tracks here and there, but again can't seem to find the reasons why they became and still are this famous. I got the opportunity to see them live in a festival in Barcelona, and on the day they were playing, I saw a number of their fans walking around with personalized Kiss Legions t-shirts from fan clubs from all over the world. So they still move a lot of fans who travel specifically to see Kiss, to the point of disregarding the rest of the bands who are playing at the same festival. They just came there with one intent, and that is to see Kiss. Everything else was superfluous. Maybe because I was tired after 3 days at the festival area, or because Paul Stanley was speaking too much between one track and the other, we ended up leaving before the end of their show. I understand that they have influenced the whole generation of youths at the time, who then ended up moving towards heavy metal, but that for me doesn't justify their big following, even because most of their records from the late 80s all through the 90s and the recent ones have been, as far as I'm concerned, quite bad. The idea that if you were a stadium band in the 70s and 80s because you were putting on a great show back then, supported with great music, that you still have to be a stadium band today when the quality of the entire show is considerably below that standard, and you haven't released anything up to the level of your legacy, is something I cannot understand. The fourth band on this list is none other than Led Zeppelin. Considered by many as one of the first heavy metal bands ever, if not the first band, not by me obviously. First of all, Led Zeppelin as a famous hard rock band have definitely influenced their genre and younger generations who would eventually play and listen to heavy metal. But I think their legacy is highly inflated, and although I don't mind some of their tracks in general, I find their music highly repetitive and lacks that special something. Apart from that, it has been shown that the band took inspiration from particular lesser known bands and reworked those ideas into their own tracks. Some call it stealing, some call it plagiarism, some call it taking inspiration. Whatever you call it, it is clear that maybe the band, as good as they were as musicians, are overrated with regards to their influence on the genre. Being a good band is one thing, but being regarded as one of the biggest bands ever is another thing, and I don't feel that they belong to the latter category. Maybe the myths surrounding the stories of debauchery during their tours helped their bad boy image, and in turn that elevated the band to more notoriety. But music-wise, I never felt that they were more than a good, maybe even very good hard rock band. And on the number one spot, I decided to put quite possibly the epitome of overrated bands, and I'm obviously referring to AC/DC. When a band sells a whole stadium of 50,000 people in 20 minutes and the whole tour in Australia sells in 15 minutes, then they are either bringing something so innovative and groundbreaking that it takes the world by storm, or else your music is so standard and two-dimensional that, notwithstanding everyone's musical preferences, you will still find the music interesting. Obviously, AC/DC have never been an innovative band. They followed the specific hard rock formula and ran with it for the whole of their career, releasing album after album, which practically feels like a carbon copy of the previous one. Again, the band members are great at what they do, and I'm sure that their show is a lot of fun. But when speaking about hard rock and metal, just having fun is not enough. There must be something deeper than that in order to take a good band to legendary status. What I really can't understand is this worldwide fascination with AC/DC, what made it happen, kind of. I understand that they are appealing to people who are not necessarily into rock music at all, but there are other bands who sound similar to them, but they never got the same success, and selling 50k tickets in 15 minutes is much more than success. It's something that I think is quite unique in the music scene in general, let alone in hard rock. So far, all these reasons, AC/DC kind of takes the cake of the most overrated band ever. And there goes the 5 bands that for me are amongst the most overrated bands ever. Keep in mind that I like these bands, but I feel they have overachieved compared to the quality of the music and the legacy they are or have left behind. So let me know if you agree with my choices. Who would you have added to this list? Don't post bands obviously which you don't like, as that kind of defeats the purpose of being overrated. Maybe I will do a separate video of bands I hate from a musical perspective, of course, and why I do hate them. Actually, I'll do something I haven't done before yet, and I'll tell you that once this video gets 50 thumbs up, I will do the video with the bands I hate, as that always kind of attracts a lot of reactions. So start hitting that thumbs up. As soon as we get 50, I will do a video with my most hated bands. But most importantly, write down in the conversations below if you agree with us. Leave your thoughts over there about today's subject. Let's start the discussion on this video as well. Nothing more to say from my end, so as always, stay safe and metal on. Cheers.